Welcome back, strangers. We recently spent a Friday night investigating the Bellamy Mansion with MichaelScot and Joey Adventures. The mansion was built between 1859 and 1861 for Dr. John Bellamy and his family. It is one of the most magnificent houses in Wilmington, North Carolina. It has 22 rooms, 10,000 total square feet, and a rooftop belvedere that provides a gorgeous view of downtown. The home does, however, have a dark history that causes many to believe it's one of the most haunted houses in North Carolina. Dr. Bellamy was incredibly wealthy. He was originally a physician by trade, but in the 1850 census, he was listed as a merchant. Most of his wealth came from the turpentine distillery, his 10,000-acre Grovely plantation, and various investments in local banks and railroads. He was pro-slavery, and in 1860, he owned 114 enslaved workers across 3 counties in North Carolina. Dr. Bellamy was a secessionist who was known to tyrannize over anyone suspected of Unionism. He threw a huge party in the streets when South Carolina seceded from the Union, and personally headed Wilmington's welcoming committee for the Confederate President Jefferson Davis in 1861. Dr. Bellamy and his family moved into the home in early 1861 as the American Civil War was escalating. The Bellamys moved their 8 children into the mansion and 9 enslaved workers into the surrounding outbuildings. The family did not live in the mansion long. They had to move out in 1862 when the yellow fever epidemic ravaged the city of Wilmington. The Bellamys were forced to take refuge at the Grovely plantation, where they would safely remain during the American Civil War. On February 22, 1865, Union forces arrived in Wilmington and took shelter in the abandoned homes of wealthy Southerners. Union General Joseph Hawley took control of the Bellamy Mansion and used it as his headquarters to command the Wilmington district until the end of the war. The federal government seized the property after the official end of the war in April of 1865. The Bellamys were not allowed back in Wilmington until Dr. Bellamy received a presidential pardon from Andrew Johnson. Finally, at the end of September of 1865, the home was returned to the family in shambles. The walls, paint, and floors were all covered in filth. They said the basement of the home was more like a pig pen than anything else. Yet most of the fixtures, mantels, and mirrors survived the occupation with little damage. The Bellamys returned to their home and restored it to its former glory. Eliza Bellamy planted a wonderful garden, and the family hired caretakers and servants to take care of all of their needs. It was these servants who first began to whisper that the mansion was haunted. Many claimed that the home was full of vengeful spirits, including a skeleton that was known to appear in the basement of the home. These early hauntings can be explained as the result of Dr. Bellamy's mischievous son, William "Willie" Bellamy. Willie had attended medical school in New York, and when he returned home, he was given a room in the basement to use as his office. He brought a skeleton home with him, which he took great delight in using to scare the servants in the basement. Willie loved hearing the servants' silly stories of spirits in the basements. It didn't take long before the stories of the Bellamy ghost spread throughout Wilmington, but were they really only stories? The children of Dr. Bellamy would go on to be successful doctors, politicians, businessmen, and farmers. Only one of his daughters, Elizabeth, would marry. Another daughter, Kate Taylor, died as an infant in 1858. The other 2, Eliza and Ellen, lived out their days unmarried in the family's old mansion. Eliza passed away in 1926, leaving Ellen as the last Bellamy in the home. Ellen did not leave the mansion for the last 15 years of her life. This is when the stories surrounding the mansion really began to spread around town. People passing by the old home would sometimes report seeing an older couple looking out the upstairs windows. The man is always seen wearing an old military uniform, and the woman in a flared antebellum gown, despite it only being Ellen and her caretakers inside the home. Ellen died in the home in 1946. After her death, the mansion passed through a series of heirs. The magnificent home sat vacant for nearly 30 years as it slowly slipped into disrepair. In 1972, Bellamy Mansion Incorporated was formed to preserve the home. Sadly, an arsonist set fire to the home 1 month later. Fortunately, the fire department was able to put out the flames and save the mansion. The devastating fire damaged much of the interior plasterwork, the original wood, and furniture. It greatly slowed down the preservation and restoration efforts. In 1989, Bellamy Mansion Incorporated donated the property to the Historic Preservation Foundation of North Carolina so the mansion could be turned into a public historical site. In 1990, a film crew had a strange experience in the home. After wrapping their shoot, they began looking through stacks of paper and old boxes in the library. Suddenly, they heard the front door slam shut and loud, heavy footsteps coming down the hall. They were terrified because they were supposed to be the only ones in the mansion. Minutes later, the library door swung open on its own. Cold air began rushing into the room, causing all of the old papers to scatter across the library. The film crew immediately ran out of the house. When they slammed the front door closed on their way out, something began pounding against the door. It was so loud that it rattled the front windows of the home. In 1994, the Bellamy Mansion Museum of History and Design Arts officially opened to the public. However, it didn't take long before some visitors and tour guides began reporting their own paranormal encounters in the mansion. Many report hearing children's voices coming from empty rooms or catching a glimpse of a ghostly child smiling in the corner of the old children's playroom before vanishing into thin air. Many blame the sightings on the ghost of one of the Bellamy's mischievous children still playing tricks even after death. Doors are known to slam shut on their own, and many report hearing unexplained noises while inside the home. Heavy footsteps are often heard walking around upstairs, despite no one being there. Paranormal investigators have captured several strange photos, videos, and EVPs while investigating the mansion.
Ethan and Blake are next to me. Can you say one of their names? Ethan. Did you hear that?
I heard that.
Many believe the home is haunted by Ellen Bellamy, who was 94 when she died in the mansion. Her old wheelchair is known to move itself from one room to another. Some wedding guests have claimed that they've seen the wheelchair follow them around. Ellen spent her last years lying in bed and reading the newspaper every day. Supposedly, you can still find her ink-stained handprints on the walls, despite the walls being repeatedly repainted. The Bellamy Mansion has now restored the slave quarters on the property. It's one of the best examples of urban slave housing in the state, and one of the few remaining open to the public. Many believe the building is still haunted by the old servants who returned to the mansion with the Bellamys after the American Civil War. While we investigated the mansion, there were certain parts of the house where you felt like something was there watching you, or as if you were interrupting something when you walked in.
Blake, what are you doing? What are you? Why do you want to stay in this room,
I
man?
saw the light shining over here. I was like, "He's not in here."
Were you just sleeping in here?
No.
You look asleep.
The creepiest part of the house was definitely the children's room and nursery. Seeing the old dolls made the room very eerie. Also, the creepy old stage area at the end of the hall where the kids would play. We kept hearing strange noises coming from it and the nursery. The very top of the house does give a perfect view of downtown Wilmington, but it does seem like something more sinister may be lingering atop the old Belvedere. We played with MichaelScot's spirit dice up there and got some pretty interesting answers. The basement of the home, where Willie played tricks on the servants, felt like something lingered, along with upstairs in the piano room and parlor. Would you be brave enough to spend a night investigating the mansion? Whether you are or not, be sure to check out part 2 of our Bellamy Mansion video, coming out later this week, where we'll be showing the footage from our overnight investigation at the mansion and our findings, some of which may just send shivers down your spine.
Let me know you're here.
Thanks, strangers, for watching. Be sure to check out MichaelScot and Joey Adventure's videos from the investigation to see what creepy activity they may have captured. Both are amazing investigators, and their channels are linked in the video description. We hope to see you back for the chilling part 2, and until then, stay strange.